Welcome to the Monterey Center for Spiritual Living. Welcome home to your illustrious and magnificent oneness with Spirit. Our topic for today is leaning into the discomfort. And we continue with our annual theme from our Centers for Spiritual Living, which is timeless wisdom and evolutionary vision. Our theme for this month is the soul's call, and as I mentioned earlier, our talk today is lean into the discomfort. Lean into the discomfort. And just a little bit of a recap from last week. We began the series of listening to and being attentive to the soul's call. And we looked at being pushed by pain. And we identified 3 areas where pain works on our behalf. And the first area is pain is the perfect fertilizer. And I know some of you may have gotten a chuckle out of that when I mentioned that on last Sunday. Our life goes through seasons just like a garden. And we can think of pain as fertilizer, preparing the soil for our life to represent our deepest soul purpose. The other point is that pain is not punishment. And I really want to sink this in. Stop thinking that you must have done something wrong if you're experiencing something painful. And I'm going to get up in the camera like a friend that I know, and I'm going to say, stop it. Stop it. Release this lie. The truth is, you're moving away from something that is out of alignment with your deepest desires and being pushed and pulled toward what it is that you really want. And then finally, we can let pain be the pathway. The journey through life, the journey through the pain is the pathway to joy. And I know it doesn't feel like that when we're in the midst of it. But as we replace the consciousness that delivered the pain with a renewed commitment to demonstrate our best life yet, shedding the old ways and false beliefs allows our faith to deepen, and the life that we have longed for begins to manifest. And so as we shift to leaning into the discomfort, we look to the evolutionary vision of our Centers for Spiritual Living Global Vision Statement. And for today, we read, we envision a worldwide culture in which forgiveness, whether for errors, injustices, or debts, is the norm. We envision a worldwide culture where forgiveness, whether for errors, injustices, or debts, is the norm. And from the timeless wisdom of our science of mind principles, our core concepts, and our values, we look to core concept number 8, which is forgiveness. In the eternal now, there can be no place for divine anger, for unforgiveness, or for punishment. If we perceive a need for forgiveness, this is a human condition. And remember that we are spiritual beings living as this human experience. And so human forgiveness is the process that frees us up to live in the eternal now. And this brings us back to recognizing our beingness as individualized expressions of the divine. Human forgiveness is a process that frees us to live in the eternal now. It is the essential step before real spiritual growth can flourish. Science of Mind teaches that the ultimate goal of life is complete emancipation from all discord of every nature, and that this goal is sure to be attained by all. And so bit by bit, step by step, prayer by prayer, thought by thought, we move towards this ultimate goal to live a life that is free of all discord of every nature. And in doing that, we also recognize that what we see is what we see with. What we see is what we see with. If the only thing we can feel or see is the pain, then pain is what we will see. Forgiveness allows us to unburden ourselves and to see the world in a new way. And I offer these following quotes from Dr. Holmes, our founder, that are from our Science of Mind textbook. And Holmes writes, "The world is beginning to realize that it has learned all it should through suffering and pain." I think this is giving meaning to the expression to stay woke. The world is beginning to realize that it has learned all it should through suffering and pain. Surely there can be no intelligence in the universe that wishes a person to be sick, suffer pain, be unhappy, and end in oblivion. And this is from page 107 in our textbook. Holmes also writes, "We have shown that a person's nature is the same as God's nature. We should have no intellectual difficulty in realizing that a finite intelligence could not make an automatic individuality. And this explains why a person suffers on their road to self-discovery." And I think what Holmes is trying to get us to comprehend here is that our nature is the same as God's nature. It's the same as Spirit's nature. It's the same as this creative intelligence, whatever expression that you identify with as a source. We should have no intellectual difficulty in realizing that this infinite intelligence will not make an automatic individuality. And this explains why a person suffers on the road to discovery. And so again, this road, this journey of self-awakening, this journey that is bringing us back home, this journey of self-discovery contains all of these human elements that give rise to the experience of pain. However, we are to remember that our nature is the same as God's nature, and that God does not make an automatic individuality. And then Holmes further goes on to say that a person's suffering is not God ordained. And remember, I mentioned earlier to let go of that lie that we have been told that we're suffering for some punishment or there's some karma that is coming to us from our past. That is not the truth. A person's suffering, our suffering, is not God ordained, because each person creates their own experience as they become individualized. We are continually creating our own reality. By individuality is meant choice, self-choice, volition, conscious mind, personified spirit, complete freedom. And there is a power to back up that freedom. We cannot imagine a mechanical or unconscious individuality to be real and free. Individuality must be created and the image of perfection left alone to make its own great discovery. And so some of this can be a kind of a tongue twister because Holmes tends to write this way. But again, what I believe that is being conveyed here is that suffering is not God ordained. And that as we lean into, as we learn to express our own individuality, we are free to create the image of perfection, and we're left alone to make the great discovery for ourselves. And I have 3 illustrations to offer related to our topic this morning. And the first one is that pain is here for a reason. Pain is here for a reason. In science of mind, we know that we are perfect, we are whole, and we are complete. If our lives are manifesting in a way that is not whole, that is not perfect, that is not complete, or causing us pain, then there is a thought that is in the way. The thought causing the pain is an untruth and does not lend itself to the integrity of our being. The integrity or structure of our being is enforced by good and positive thoughts. And if there is pain, we must ask, what is getting in the way of my natural state of health? So again, this gets back to our thought. What we think is what we become. What we think is what manifests in our life. So the thought that is getting in the way of our really expressing our perfection and our wholeness is that which is blocking our integrity. And so we replace that with good and positive thoughts. And we continually ask, what is getting in the way in my natural state of being? And the second point is that suffering is optional. And I remember a few years back, there was a kind of a joke that was running around that said, growing up is mandatory, but growing old is optional. And so if we look at pain from that same aspect, we know that pain is inevitable. For example, if we stub our toe, if we fall down, if we have a surgical procedure, if we get sick or something of that nature, we are going to experience pain. Now, how we deal with the pain is up to each one of us individually. Suffering is caused by the illusion that we should never have pain. And this gets back. Everything goes back to some of the original thoughts that were planted in us that we're having to uproot and to pull out those weeds. We may have been taught somewhere along the line that suffering is the price that we pay for living in this human experience. Suffering is an illusion that we should not have the pain. When we recognize the message in the pain is moving to help us to restore to that place of wholeness, then suffering cannot be a result. As we're moving to this place of wholeness, as we're moving beyond the illusion that we are required to suffer, then suffering becomes optional. And suffering also gets in the way of our healing. So our focus is to be on wholeness and not on suffering. And the third illustration is to forgive yourself. Forgive yourself. Forgiveness is the open door to a better life. An essential part of healing is to forgive ourselves for whatever is happening. Whatever has happened in the past, whatever is happening right now, or whatever we may be projecting into the future. Forgiving ourselves for whatever is happening. And that is basically letting myself off of the hook and no longer taking responsibility for what someone else may have done in my life based on their lack of knowing the truth of who they are and the truth of who I am. So it's a letting go. Forgiveness of others is essential so that we can unburden ourselves. You know, it's like the old adage of taking poison as a means of getting back at someone who has hurt you, and they're living their life, and we're slowly dying of the poison. That is what unforgiveness tends to do to us. Forgiveness allows divine wisdom to well up and to flow through our being, providing answers, wellness, and evolution. And we're all on this journey of evolution, expanding our conscious awareness of the truth of who we are as expressions of the divine. And here's a very short and easy forgiveness practice, if you choose to use it. Bless yourself. And bless the person that you are forgiving. Anytime negative thoughts come up, thoughts about the person or the experience or the situation, bless that person, bless the experience, bless the individual in their health, their wealth, and in their life. And at the same time, bless yourself to experience these same qualities of peace, joy, and abundance. So that which we desire for ourselves, we are to desire for someone else. Because at some point, all of us are doing the very best that we can at the level of our understanding. And so as we begin to expand our conscious awareness of the truth of who we are, we move into that place of recognizing that I am okay just as I am. And so I can forgive myself for thinking less than of myself. And as I move into my place of wholeness, then I invite others. I draw as the Christ, as Jesus, the master teacher says, I draw into my sphere of influence, my sphere of awareness, those who are projecting and are on their own journey of wellness and evolution. And so what does all of this mean? What does all of this mean? The first step that we can do is to scan your mind for viruses. You know, we scan our computers and our phones and our other electronic devices for viruses. And sometimes we will get a warning if we have a virus protection. We'll get a little note that the computer is going to do a scan, and you can choose to do it now or you can delay it until later. Scan your mind for viruses, and these viruses show up as fears, anxieties, judgments, doubts, hatred, and despair. And put a little Post-it note, put a little sticky next to each one of these that says, outdated, no longer valid. Outdated, no longer valid. And if you want to have a real tactical experience of this, I invite you to go through the spice cabinet in your kitchen or wherever you may have your spices and check for the expiration dates on your spice containers. You might be amazed at what is in there that is expired. And you also may find some triplicates and many more of the same kind. And these are just examples that I'm offering you as a visual. And getting back to scanning our mind for viruses that have shown up as fears, anxieties, judgments, doubts, hatred, despair, and anything else that is outdated and no longer valid. We let this pain speak of its wisdom, and then we seek the forgiveness being offered. Let the pain speak its wisdom and then seek the wholeness and the wisdom that is being offered. As we lean into the pain, we discover messages, forgive the untruth and reclaim our wholeness. We also recognize that freedom lives our life and is a direct result of our thoughts. If humanity is to awaken to its spiritual magnificence and a world that works for everyone, which is one of our taglines, we envision a world that works for everyone, everywhere, right where they are. In order for that to occur, though, our discomfort must become our guru, individually and collectively. We must dive deeply into those areas that we shy away from. And some of them are hot topics, such as politics, privilege, Black Lives Matter, spiritual activism, money, gender and sexual orientation, and other things. Those things that we want to avoid because they bring up painful experiences. And quite often those painful experiences are based in ignorance, ignorance of knowing the truth, ignorance of remembering the true nature of our own being and the being of those who are around us. But now I have some good news for you. And the good news that many of these conversations are taking place right now. And as we're learning to lean into and to listen, we cultivate techniques for opening conversations. And as I've shared with you in the past, our conversations are not about calling someone out. Calling someone out is to engage in shame and blame. And all that does is shut each person that is involved, each party that is involved in the conversation, we shut down and the conversation goes no place. If an experience happens, if something happens that may trigger something within us, we're invited to call someone into the conversation. And calling into is having a private conversation that addresses the issue for the purpose of gaining understanding. And this leads to calling forward. So we do not call out, we call into for our private conversations for the purpose of gaining understanding. And then we call forward. And the invitation to call forward is to be something greater, something that is moving us towards compassion and understanding. And perhaps one of the more challenging aspects of calling forward is to remember that we do not have to teach anyone anything. By calling forward, we learn to lead with a question rather than a demand. I share my story. The other person shares their story. We share our experiences, we share our vulnerability, and we share these with the intent of finding a connection point. Finding a connection point. I remember reading, there's an author that we studied while I was in ministerial school, Marcus Borg, and I believe Dr. Borg has made his transition. But there's an excellent book that he wrote, reading the Bible again for the first time, reading the Bible again for the first time. And there's another book that he wrote, and the title is not coming to my memory right now, but I remember in the second book that I read, he was, and Dr. Borg was a Christian theologian, and so he was saying to his reading audience that when a traditional person who practices Christianity asks if one believes in Jesus as their personal savior, what they're looking for is a point of connection. In other words, the question that is being asked is, can I be safe with you? And so I offer that as an illustration for calling forward. It's the invitation to find those points of connection, those points where conversations can take place. And those attempts to call forward may lead us to change. Now, in reality, there are some conversations that we cannot have with everybody today. But I do believe in the power of yet, that there is hope in the power of yet. And so rather than avoiding not saying something at all, be courageous to say what may feel like it is wrong, not from a derogatory or hurtful or mean-spirited nature, but we can give each other the respect and the grace to come forward. And I think this quote from Carl Jung may sum this up. There is no coming to consciousness without pain. And so believing in the power of yet, not avoiding saying something wrong, but being courageous to say something from a place of general inquiry and a general desire to know. This is what we are called to do. This is how we manifest our spiritual divinity. And so our call to action this morning and our questions for reflective pause and journaling, and I've asked our tech team to drop these into the chat for our Zoom audience and into the comments section for our Facebook community. Our call to action questions are, what are the different kinds of pain that we can experience? Or we may personalize this and ask, What are the different kinds of pain I experience? What are the different kinds of pain I experience? And how might we let ourselves discover the wisdom of the pain experience and to keep suffering from entering the picture? Remembering that suffering is optional, and suffering is what actually blocks our moving through. It blocks the wisdom of the pain experience from coming through and teaching us the lesson that we are to learn for ourselves. And then our third question for contemplation or for our journal is, what are some of the ways we might forgive ourselves and others? And what does it mean to forgive? What are some of the ways we might forgive ourselves and others? And what does it mean to forgive? And so our affirmation for this week is, I lean into discomfort and I allow it to teach me. I lean into the discomfort and I allow it to teach me. And I invite us now to pray together. My power today is the courage to be what the Holy Spirit intends for me. I want to be better and opening for God to make me stronger. And in this opening, I recognize that there is a source, that there is one source of everything that there is. And that right here and right now, each one is surrounded by this all-prevailing presence of pure spirit. And that we live, move, and have our beingness in the pureness of spirit. In the mind of this infinite intelligence, each one is whole, perfect, and complete, right where we are, right here, right now. And so I speak my word of gratitude, knowing that I am whole, perfect, and complete, and that each one that is listening to this talk this morning is whole, perfect, and complete in the mind of God. Releasing anything that appears opposite to that, releasing any untruth that says, I am less than, releasing any untruth that says, woe is me, I was born into whatever it is that I wish to describe about myself. It's an opportunity to change the conversation I have with myself. To say that in the mind of this essence, that created me, I am whole, perfect, and complete. And so I'm declaring that in this wholeness and in this completeness, as we move through the experience of living day to day, that we live the example of calling forward, engaging into those conversations, leaning into the mystery of the mystique of another. And in listening to our stories, we listen for points of connection. We listen for points of similarity. We listen for points of shared experiences. And it is from those points of shared experiences and a common connection that we move forward to build the beloved community. This community where forgiveness is the norm for debts, for errors, for any missteps, that this is the norm, that we no longer hold ourselves hostage, that we no longer hold another person hostage. And this is not some woo-woo fairy tale that I'm talking about. This is the pure essence of spirit that is reflecting itself through us and as us individually and collectively. Knowing this to be the truth of our being, I give thanks. And in giving thanks, I also bless each prayer request that we may be holding in our hearts. Those that may have been shared and those that may be retained in silence, knowing that the answer is always yes. And so for this and so much more, I am eternally grateful. And I release this word into the law, which always says yes. and I just allow it to be so. And we affirm it together by saying, and so it is. And I invite you who subscribe to our newsletter to reach out and contact and connect with a practitioner or a minister for one-on-one prayer and spiritual support. And now we move into this aspect of our service where we participate in the law of circulation. And we have an affirmation of abundance. And our affirmation of abundance reads, I recognize the presence of God within as the source of my abundance. Out of my abundance consciousness flows everything I could desire in life. With gratitude and thanksgiving, I now participate in the flow of uninterrupted abundance. I release this visible substance and outer symbol of my inner supply into the physical world. This prosperous experience is evidence of my abundance consciousness. And in sharing your abundance and participating in this law of circulation, we have several ways that you can support our spiritual center. And it is through our giving that we continue to receive. And the methods for donating are on your screen. You can mail in a check and the center address is on the screen. You can use our secure website, and you can also text to give. And all of your donations are deductible to the extent that the law allows. And so again, we thank you for the outstanding way that you continue to support this center, your center, our center, because we're all on this journey together. So in gratitude to our virtual family that has joined us, we say thank you, and we invite you to come back next week. And our talk will be what's evolution without love? What's evolution without love? And so we say thank you and bless you to our virtual community. God is with you.